Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This video is going to be my thoughts and opinions on the book Swan Song by Robert McCammon. Swan Song was last month's pick for the Harrowing Horror book club from Cammie's Korner. I will leave her channel and information on that horror book club if you're interested down below. This video may contain some spoilers in it, so if you don't want to know anything about Swan Song, feel free to skip this video. It will not hurt my feelings. But anyway, let's go ahead and start talking about the book. Swan Song is a post-apocalyptic horror book. It is very long and epic, and it gets compared to Stephen King's The Stand a lot. I myself would compare it to The Stand if we are just talking about an overall type of book. It is a very character-driven post-apocalyptic story where you have the good guys and the bad guys. The way the chapters are broken down are very similar, whereas you will have an entire chapter dedicated to one or two characters, and then it will kind of flip-flop between the good guys and the bad guys. You are following their journey to pretty much the same destination, at least for a large chunk of the book. Kansas played a major part in both Swan Song and The Stand. Personally, I'm the type of person that does get very bothered by books that are too similar, in my opinion. I don't like it when I feel like one author stole from another. For the first several chapters of that book, I was really bothered and annoyed because it felt like a copycat of The Stand, and I was just pissed because I'm like, who can copy The Stand, right? If it wasn't for the fact that it was a book for our book club, I probably would have put it down at that point because I was so angry about it. But I pushed through, continued on, and at a certain point, right before the middle, I guess, it veers off pretty drastically from The Stand. Even though it has a very similar story, I don't know if that's the correct word I should be using, it does veer off and is different, and became different enough for me to really have to figure out which book I liked better, The Stand or Swan Song. Now, if you guys have been watching me for a while, you know I'm not really one to do book reviews. I don't trust my own opinions on things very much, and I second guess myself all the time. I have a hard time expecting anybody to care what I'm saying, so I don't really do reviews. But there was something about this book that made me want to take notes, and I'm not a note taker. I struggle to write a grocery list. So first thing I wanted to mention from my notes here, in the similarities between Swan Song and The Stand, is I would kind of compare them, this is where my mind went, and I know it's weird, but I would kind of compare them to the store Lowe's and Home Depot. So Lowe's and Home Depot are pretty much the same store, but there are differences. I myself prefer to go into Lowe's because Lowe's overall is geared more towards women, with the colors that they use, with the way their aisles are laid out, with the lighting, with the way their customer service works. It is a store that's geared more for women, and Home Depot is a store that's geared more towards men. I hope you're following me. I know I'm going off on a weird tangent here, but as I was reading Swan Song, I felt like it was grittier, dirtier, more intense, more aggressive, more manly or masculine than The Stand. It really gave me the sense that The Stand is a more feminine version of a post-apocalyptic world, and Swan Song is a more masculine version. And I'm not sure why, but Home Depot and Lowe's just kept playing through my mind as how I would describe these two books to someone who hasn't read them yet. An example of what I'm talking about is the very beginning of both books. It's how the world ends, basically, and in The Stand it ends with a virus, and it's kind of a slow rollout as the illness is, you know, going through the world. But in the way it rolls out, there are people who are able to be with their loved ones. There's chances to say goodbye in a lot of these cases. It's just a more empathetic, I guess, kind of destruction. Whereas in Swan Song, the end of the world happens because of a nuclear war, and countries are just like bombing the shit out of each other, and it's just death and destruction everywhere, and it happens in seconds. To me, that played out in a much grittier and less empathetic sort of way. It was so much dirtier. You have the fallout, and you had basically a nuclear winter that comes about from the bombs, and it just seemed more traumatic than the virus did. I also feel like in The Stand, the Antichrist character was not as psychotic as the similar character in Swan Song. When you're first introduced to, I'm going to call him the Antichrist character because I'm not really sure what he's supposed to represent, but when you're introduced to that character in Swan Song, he's sitting in a movie theater watching the movie Faces of Death, and I guess kind of giggling to himself about how awesome this movie is. He just seems like more of a lunatic to me than the Antichrist character in The Stand, so again, it gave me a darker feeling. In The Stand, the characters, as they were going through their lives, a lot of The Stand was their inner thoughts, what characters were thinking about themselves and others and the situation. It was very thought driven, and I feel like Swan Song was a lot more action. It was a bit more of a page turner in that sense because there was just something constantly going on, where in The Stand I feel like there was a bit more downtime. Overall, I feel like I really loved the good guy characters in both The Stand and Swan Song. I was connected to a lot of the characters in both books on the good side. I really loved Sister Creep in Swan Song. I found her whole story to be heartbreaking, and then I was just so rooting for her and her determination and her ability to overcome things. I just thought she was a fantastic character. I loved Artie, I loved Josh, I loved Paul. I was just rooting for all of these characters. And that's not even to mention Swan, the main character that the book is named after. That being said, I did not enjoy the bad guys in Swan Song nearly as much as I liked the bad guys in The Stand. And for me, villains are just as important as the good guys. I want to be interested by my villains, and I found the villains in Swan Song to be kind of boring. And what I mean by that is I don't enjoy villains that are just psychopaths. I don't enjoy villains that are just on rampages with no clear idea of what they're doing. They're just crazy. That's just not the type of villains that I enjoy reading about. I like my villains to be more intellectual, I guess. I end up comparing a lot of villains to Hannibal Lecter because he's the type of villain I really do enjoy. And one more thing I wanted to mention about the villains is that it was very obvious to me that the author created the villains to be either military people or religious people. I just feel like that was kind of a cop-out, and maybe I would have enjoyed those characters more had they had different backgrounds. And for that reason alone, because I really did love the story, I totally recommend the book. The writing was fantastic. Everything about it was great, except for the villains. For that reason alone, I'm going to give Swan Song 4.5 stars out of 5, whereas I gave The Stand 5 stars. In my opinion, they are both incredible books, fantastic storylines, fantastic characters, but just because I liked the villains in The Stand this much more, I'm gonna have to give an extra half a star to The Stand, and it pushed it over the top a little bit for me. But it was still a great read, absolutely loved it, totally recommend it. I hope you guys read it someday. If you have read it and you have any thoughts you want to share, please leave those down below. And just to let you guys know what this month's, what is this, February's book of the month is for Harrowing Horror is Needful Things by Stephen King. That's actually a book that I read like 20 years ago, and I remember enjoying it a whole lot, so I'm really looking forward to rereading it this month with Cammie and anybody else who is interested in joining along with her book club. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know this video was a bit rambly. Like I said, I am not used to doing reviews, and I feel like I really suck at this, so I hope it wasn't awful. I hope you guys have a great week, and I will see y'all later. Bye.